How should a parent in this situation that wants the best for their kids to become a Dr. Ray or just excel academically, how should they navigate, these school systems that aren't ranked as high?
Oh, these questions are always, when they get a bit more personal for me, it becomes a different process. So first I'll just kind of put on my professional hat, then I'll go personal because it's easier for me that way. So as a sociologist who studies some of these things, the first thing is to realize that unfortunately today, schools are more segregated, racially segregated, segregated by class than they were in 1980. So parents have to realize today that their kids are facing things that they didn't even face when they were kids. So I think that's the first thing to realize. So then what that means is oftentimes parents are choosing between a lower ranked and a less well-resourced school that has more racial diversity versus a school that has more economic resources but isn't as diverse when it comes to race. And that is unfortunately the reality for a lot of people in the United States. I mean, we happen to be able to live in an area that is predominantly black and affluent. And I mean, it's something I've never seen before in terms of being able to see kids who feel free, who feel the ability to be who they really are. And that's extremely rare. But I get this question a lot from parents around the country. And again, we've lived all over the United States. We've lived in Europe. We've traveled the world. I mean, we've lived in the South. We've lived in the Midwest. We've lived on the West Coast in California. And now we live on the East Coast. And I can tell you that no matter where you go, you're going to deal with this problem. So how do you solve it? What advice would I give to parents? First thing is realize that economic resources is not the only thing that's important for black kids. What I mean by that is you need to find a place as a parent where your kid feels whole, where the teachers and the other students value your child as a person. And the only way you're going to see that is by going to observe what's happening in the school. Even public schools, you have the right to go and observe. And if there's pushback at their school about you coming in, observing and watching what's going on, that should tell you a lot about access that you're going to have to your kids after once they're in that school. I think the other thing that's extremely key is that, because look, being real, a lot of people can't afford to go to private schools. I mean, private schools are expensive, but that is a route that people can go either through academics, through testing into the schools, because these schools also want diversity, or your kid having a particular skill that the school values. That could be sports, that could be drama, that could be band. So there are ways in which you can actually help your child get access to these particular places. Now, I say all that to say that oftentimes what people think is that the school that's ranked the highest means that it's the best. It might be the best for kids who don't look like my kids. I mean, a high-ranked school doesn't necessarily mean that it's great for kids that look like me and my kids. So that's why you have to go and check out the schools. The other thing I'll say is if you then choose that route to, say, put your child in a more economically well-resourced school that's also predominantly white, you're going to then have to supplement some of the cultural aspects that you want your child to have. So you have to deliberately seek out certain types of organizations in your community, or maybe even travel a bit far. And this is why. See, the rankings, particularly say on greater schools, for example, are based on relativity, they're not based in absolute terms. What does that mean? Your school is ranked based on other schools in your area. It's not based on an absolute score for that school to other schools around the United States. So part of it is understanding that relativity. The other thing about economic resources is that schools that have a large percentage of black students or Latino students across the country have like $23 billion less in funding. Like, I mean, it's not even close. And part of this is people realizing that school values are often based on property values. So if you live in an area that's less well-resourced when it comes to real estate, then your school is going to get less of those property tax numbers. So part of it is helping parents to make sense of these dynamics. And so I'll get back to one of the first points I made. One of the things that my wife always says in our house, because, I mean, look, we've always been to public schools. Every school I went to growing up was a public school. My mom and I, we moved 13 times for my 18th birthday. I get that life. I get housing instability. I get moving to different schools. I've seen a lot of schools, and now as a professor, I have the ability to travel around and give lectures and research at schools and universities across the country. And I can tell you that the value that a school places on your kid should be your main objective to find. Because you can have all the resources in the world at that school, but if your kid can't access those resources because they think your kid isn't smart enough, they think they're not good enough, they don't value them in a way that they do, or they engage in what happens to a lot of black kids, and that's called benign neglect. That means they don't necessarily vilify them, but they're not the kids getting selected to do things. They're not the kids who get the extra attention. And what you want to find is a place where your kid is treated as much as possible in the way that you would treat your kid, or better yet, the way that that teacher would treat their own kid. And the only way you're going to see that is to go and observe. There, in a lot of places, even in the public market, you can enter a lottery and have the option to go to a lot of different schools. So explore these options on the websites. Talk to other parents and aim to put your kids in a lot of different places. But I'll say this. Once your kid kind of starts in school, you do have to watch the instability and moving them around a lot. It's fine when they're younger, but as they get older, later on in elementary school, middle school, high school, try to find a place where they can find a niche, they can find other kids that can be similar to them, and where they're really, really valued. That's key. Hey, I'm Dr. Rashawn Ray. Look, if you care about black communities, minority communities, and you're interested in statistics, particularly those that highlight us in a very positive light that's about black excellence, what I need for you to do is share this video. I need for you to like it. I need for you to tag it. And I need for you to continue to embrace and highlight what's happening in our community.